Game 1 of the World Championship match between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren. I love World Championship matches. I like it that the whole of the chess world is focused on just one game. It's really unique. I'm going to plunge straight in with the chess. I'll talk about events surrounding the match at the end. I should also say from the start, I believe that Nepo is the clear favourite for this match. But let's see what happens. No doubt the commentator's curse will come into play. So it's a Spanish. Ding playing in the traditional way with e4, e5. No great experiments. I think that's to be expected. And he could play the Berlin here, but he goes for Spanish main line. Castles and bishop e7. So we could get a marshal here with rook e1. This would be mainline Spanish theory. And then d5 is the marshal gamut. Ding is a real expert in that. But in this position, instead of playing rook e1 or d3, bishop takes c6. Slight surprise already from Nepo. Now this is called the delayed exchange. The delayed exchange variation. Now this pawn is attacked. So white has to defend that. And the main line here is d3. I used to enjoy playing this at some point in my career. Basically white plays with this very solid pawn chain. And you try to eventually get in f4 with a superior pawn structure. But Nepo very quickly played rook e1. Obviously preparation. This is unusual. Very unusual. d3 is a pretty standard move. But rook e1 is very unusual. Now there's a threat to take on e5. And Ding, after about 9 minutes thought, clearly he was a little, unprepared for this move. I mean, it is a very unusual move. He just played in the traditional way, knight d7, defending this pawn with the knight. There's another way to go, which is very sharp, which is bishop g4. You can see without this light square bishop, this pin is very annoying. And this could involve a piece sacrifice like this. And this can get very tricky indeed. But anyway, that's another story. But I mean, such lines, if you haven't prepared them, very risky indeed. So Ding sticks with the traditional move, knight d7. And although this looks like a bit of a traffic jam, in fact, this knight usually swings around to e6, as we'll see in this game. So we have d4 from Nepo. So Nepo playing in a very different way to this setup I mentioned earlier with this strong pawn chain. He's just breaking open the middle. And you can see now he has this 4-3 pawn majority on the king side. Now, you'll notice this is very similar to the Berlin pawn structure, except white's pawn is on e4 and not e5. And this makes a huge difference to the position because this diagonal is open. So with the pawn blocking on e5, then actually black has decent control over these squares and d5 as well. With the pawn on e4, very different. White has more control here, and crucially, this diagonal is open. So that is always a bit of a headache for black. Nevertheless, black has two bishops and should be okay here. But obviously, Ding was somewhat surprised by this system and Nepo playing very quickly. Now, in my database, there's an old game between Bondarevsky and Smyslov, Moscow 1946, where Bondarevsky exchanged queens and Smyslov played a dream endgame, a beautiful endgame, where he cracked the position open, with f5, or attempted to. White kept it closed, beautiful blockade, and basically Smyslov took the initiative. Quite a closed position, but the point is that these knights don't have good squares to go to, and very quickly black seized the initiative, and this bishop came to the long diagonal. I mean, this is already a beautiful position for black. But Nepo, of course, came well prepared, and there's the first little improvement in the game. Queen e3, keeping the queens on the board. The queen is well centralized. This queen is going to have to move at some point, or black has to take care of the queen because of the open d file, and also black has to mine that pawn as well. Now Ding played a slightly surprising move here with bishop g4. I think, knight e6 has been seen before. This isn't completely unknown territory. Knight e6 looks like a decent move, and then even b5 in this position to sort of get these pawns going potentially and put the bishop on b7. I mean, that looks reasonable for black. Bishop g4 looks slightly odd to me. The knight moves to d4. It wants to come here normally anyway because it's looking at this fine f5 square. And this bishop is kind of out on a limb. These pieces sort of tread on each other's toes. Both minor pieces want to use e6. Knight c3. Rook d8. So Ding playing in a very straightforward way. Playing the queen up and the rook supporting the queen. But here Nepo played knight f5, which worked out okay, but there's a really interesting move here. Instead of knight f5 played, he could have gone h3. Now this is very subtle. Involves a really interesting tactic. So why can't black take on d4? Well, black can take on d4, but watch what happens. Knight d5. This is a brilliant move. Breaking communication here. If queen takes, knight takes, bishop, check. That's the crucial point. Then you take back here and white wins material because, incredibly, black has two pieces attacked, and at the end of that, white is a piece up. Now, black has ways around that, but this is quite tricky. So, for example, if the bishop comes back here, knight f5, that's a fantastic square. All these pieces are vulnerable. Rook f8, suggested by my computer, an incredible move actually. And if takes, then you can take here. So the rook defends the bishop. So knight d5 isn't working in this position. But there's no doubt that white is better in this endgame, having snaffled that pawn. So h3. Now, who knows? Did Nepo forget his opening preparation? Did he simply not see this move? I suspect that the team hadn't seriously considered these moves. In any case, Nepo went with knight f5. And the problem here is that black can actually take that. Now, Ding did not take the knight, but he should have done, because this is pretty level. Pawn is attacked, and after this move, bishop g5, black attacks the queen, is starting to exchange pieces, should be level. But instead, Ding, he hesitated. He put the knight back on e6. Okay, it's a solid square, of course. That's where the knight wants to go. But now, Nepo has a solid advantage. So he's got rid of this dark squared bishop. So two bishops, not a problem. This bishop is still lined up on c7. This bishop, you can see what I mean. It's kind of out on a limb on g4. These pieces tread on each other's toes, the bishop and knight. So black has to redeploy this piece, but it takes time. And you can see that really white has consolidated this central position. Bishop h5, f3. Super solid. I really like this. So, white could be looking to push this kingside pawn majority later. But yeah, first things first, this pawn is a permanent problem for black. f6. So the bishop wants to come back on this diagonal. h3. This is very nice from Nepo. I like this. He played this relatively quickly. I do like the king tucked away on h2. You don't have to worry about anything going on this diagonal. It could be later on you want to advance the f pawn, and the king is really well placed behind that bishop. So I like this, and I think from this particular opening, this is a dream scenario for Nepo. I think white has everything he wants from this opening. I only see two results from this position. It's either going to be a win for white, or Ding will hang on for a draw. That's how things are. Rook d1. Already, white can consider playing f4. There's a famous game between Fischer and Unziker from the Olympiad in 1970, I think it was, where Fischer advanced the f-pawn to f5 in a similar kind of position, and won a beautiful game. It was without these minor pieces. It was knight against bishop. But still, it was a model game from Fischer. So f4 is always possible, but it does destabilize white's center. It's just worth bearing in mind, but it was certainly possible to do that here because black is not well set up for counterplay on the e-file at the moment. But Nepo played steadily with rook d1, and maybe he's looking to play queen a7 at some moment. b6 shots out the queen. Again, f4 is possible, but super steady from Nepo, just taking away the b4 square from the queen. a5 from Ding. I have to say, I did not like this move. It could be that after some exchanges, maybe this knight is exchanged off, that white will win this pawn, but with opposite coloured bishops, it could still be a draw. The problem with putting another pawn on a dark square is that it might mean that white wins a second pawn. I thought a5 was an inaccuracy. To my mind, it really raises the stakes in this position. Again, f4 is an interesting move, but knight e2, this is very positional from Nepo. So what he's doing is swinging the knight round here, wants to exchange this one off and get through to c7, and hey, look at that. So for example, if c5, this didn't happen by the way, but okay, I'm playing in a very cooperative way, but this is the kind of thing that white is looking to do. You can see pressure here. After c6, queen c7 anyway, and white is going to win at least one pawn and certainly completely damage black's pawn structure on the queen side. So that's the kind of thing that Nepo's looking to do when he swings this knight round to f4. A rook takes d1 played. I think this should have been done without a5. Ding could have done the move before, but leaving the pawn on a6. Of course, exchanging pieces should be a good strategy for black to try and bring the game closer to a draw in an endgame, but well, it's still not so easy. So, big question, should black exchange here? Well, that would improve the pawn structure. That's interesting. You could just play queen takes as well, controlling the d-file, perhaps looking down here. This is not easy for black at all. c5 played by Ding. Queen d2, more pressure here. So already, could be you want to win exchange, and maybe c7 is hanging. It's not easy. c6, oof. I have to say, when that move appeared, it looked a bit dubious to me because the d6 square is now available. But this is not an easy position for black by any means. You could perhaps exchange here and just try to wait, I don't know, h5. But, I mean, it's unpleasant. White might be able to throw this knight into d5. But c6 looked like a real concession. Rook takes by Nepo. Now, if queen takes, look what happens. Bishop c7. See what I mean about the pawns being on the wrong colour squares? Nasty. So knight takes d8, but now queen f4. So this queen looking to slide down the diagonal to one of these squares. This is highly unpleasant. And just to add to that, Ding was short of time. At this stage, clock times were something like 46 minutes remaining for Nepo, 18 minutes for Ding, and they still had to get to the time control at move 40. So 14 moves still to play for Ding in 18 minutes. Not easy when you're trying to defend a difficult position. B5. Okay, that gets the pawn off the dart square. Queen B8. The queen slides in. At this point, this is already really desperate for Ding. And now white has a choice. Do you play the bishop in here to attack the knight and the pawn? This wins the pawn on a5. Or do you play bishop d6? So this wasn't played, but this is very tempting. I suspect Nepo didn't want to put his bishop offside, but this is possible. And then this bishop is going to reroute, and you know, maybe you get in at e5 to open this diagonal. That was possible. Bishop d6 also looks very attractive. This was the game continuation. I can understand why Nepo did this, because it's kind of nice to keep that queen locked in. And that's probably why he didn't take here. He was concerned perhaps about Ding getting some activity. But this is not easy. You know, the king is beautifully positioned on h2. You can see the queen controls this diagonal. And actually white has a very pleasant position there as well. But Nepo went for knight g3. I think his attacking instincts kicked in here. He wanted to keep as many pieces on the board as possible. You know, he's looking to throw this knight into the game. And it's maybe not bad. But here he goes for f4. Again, this is, to me, this is classic Nepo. You know, he decides, right, this is the moment to go for it. I've got the queen locked in. Ding's down to, you know, a minute a move. You know, 10 moves in 10 minutes, roughly. So let's go on the attack. But f4 is a destabilizing move. It's either very good or white center looks a bit shaky. There were alternatives. He could have played c3 just to take away that square from the knight. He could have played, here's an interesting move, a4. Just to fix that pawn on a5. And if that's taken, okay, it's no big deal. Then just c3 to take away this. And this knight might well fly around here or even into e7. I think it's a very interesting position. But f4, he's going for it. This is Nepo, classic Nepo. He wants to attack. He senses that he can push over Ding. h5. Okay, not so clear. Ding is fighting back. c3, taking away the d4 square from the knight. c4. Okay, things aren't so clear. So black structure is improving on this side of the board, because who knows if this knight could fly into the position. Well, let's see. h4. Okay, that stops this pawn advancing. Queen d8. This is the problem, that now this pawn has removed itself from the bishop's attack. Then Nepo is able to offer an exchange of queens. I mean, this is still, white is still better in this endgame. But black has drawing chances now. This is an interesting move again to fix this pawn on a5. But queen b7 from Nepo. Now, if queen takes, then queen f7 and, well, take care. There's all kinds of interesting things going on here. That's too much. So bishop e8. So Ding is very passive. And, you know, I have a feeling that Nepo saw this position and just instinctively felt that this should be very good for white. At least it's putting pressure on his opponent. But Ding holds firm. Queen d7. Still wants an exchange of queens. Still wants an exchange of queens. And, Well, it's not easy. Now you've got to exchange. I think the problem is, if we go back to this position, that this bishop is potentially hanging. You know, it could be a g6 and then push the knight away and the bishop is hanging. So at this point, Nepo could see nothing better than exchange queens. And actually, the moment has passed. Still 3 moves to go to get to the time control at move 40, but this is just not as dangerous as before. And this is what happened. Knight d4. Knight b7, attacking the bishop. And actually, with the bishop here, this makes a difference because this king can come around to f7 very quickly. e5, defending the bishop. King g8. King sweeping round. Bishop here, yeah, this one looks pretty good. Just taking away these squares, looking at g4. And knight c5. So finally, Ding gets his counter-attack in, looking to attack the pawn on b2. King f7. Okay, that makes sure that e6 is covered so that white can't play that. And there we go, knight d3. So black is threatening the pawn on b2, also threatening c5. And now the position is just going to burn out. So this is what happened. Basically an exchange of pawns. Yeah, got to watch out for knight d8 check, by the way, forking king and bishop. So bishop d7 and knight takes b2. You can see material is level again, and this is completely equal. And after a couple more moves, well, a draw was agreed in this position. I thought that was a fascinating first game. Nepo clearly had the better of the opening and the early middle game, but maybe just rushed it at the end with that move f4. There were other ways to go in that position. And I think Ding can count himself pretty fortunate that he escaped unscathed with a draw. Very interesting. After the game, Ding was incredibly candid. He said that in the first part of the game, before the middle game, I didn't think about chess so much. My mind was very strange. Memories, feelings, strange things happened. I feel maybe there's something wrong with my mind. Maybe it was due to the pressure of the match. I mean, that is really candid. It's rare for players to be so open. It's known that he moved hotel just before the match started. So, well, hopefully, he'll feel happier with that. By the way, he has revealed that his second, who's with him in Astana, is Richard Rapport. Now, I'm a big fan of Richard Rapport's play. Very creative. So I'm hoping we're going to see some interesting opening surprises. So anyway, that's some good news from Ding, but good news that he managed to hold this game. So Ding will have white in tomorrow's game. Yeah, it's on Monday the 10th. I hope you'll join me for this match. I'll try to be a little bit more prompt with reporting. But yeah, stick with me. It's going to be great fun. Thanks for watching.